Hi, this is Wade here again. And today I'm very happy to have on a friend of mine, a longtime friend. We've kept in touch a little bit here and there over the years, Cokie Berenyi. Cokie is one of those people that makes you feel just a little insecure about your resume. Cokie is a mother, author,
What?
business owner, founder of two nonprofits. And I love this. She wears the hat of financial samurai to her clients. She's the author of The Perfect Day and The Liberated Investor, a 40 under 40 recipient, a Woman CEO of the Year. And I'm going to let her more tell you about what she does with this, but just to briefly mention, she's the founder of Alphavest, an industry pioneer, really looking to what she calls right size Wall Street and the approach to how she takes care of clients, one client at a time. And she also inspires entrepreneurs and individuals. It's easier. Entrepreneurs and individuals. It's funny when you're reading it, things get messed up very quickly. Entrepreneurs
I
and
like
individuals at
entrepreneur.
large with their vision and really just her perspective on life. And I just, when I saw her stuff, I hadn't connected with her in a while, saw what she's up to, really excited to bring her on. And especially for those of you all who are focusing with that work-life balance, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee, whatever stage you're at, a lot of us sometimes get the benefit of seeing what other people are doing and then learning from their mistakes. And I've been presented with that. And I think Cokie, through the clients she's worked with, has a perspective that's well beyond her years in wisdom. So I'm so happy to have everybody, dun, 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 Cokie Berenyi. Welcome, Cokie.
Thank you, Wade. It's awesome to see you again, and just to have an opportunity to have a conversation. So so this makes today a perfect day. So thank you.
Awesome. Boom. All right. So start a little bit, and just to give you what I'm doing and maybe how you can best help our audience. And a lot of the people I'm working with are just trying to get to that sense of an ideal day, an ideal week, an ideal life, and it can seem so far away. Maybe start out with a little bit of what brought you to this concept of a perfect day. What got you excited about it? And by all means, feel free to go in any order. I'm certainly not a sequential speaker, but what really brought you to that, and what has made it so important for the people you work with?
This is my favorite thing to talk about. So thanks for asking. And I think first, where I'd love to start is to underwhelm the listener, because whenever I talk about perfect days and having more perfect days in your life, I consistently get this, deer in the headlight looking back at me like, what? I mean, is that even possible? Perfect days, and like, I don't even know what that looks like. And it just feels undoable. And it just seems, that's what stares back at me. And so I just want to say this is, hokey as it may sound, having more perfect days in your life really just starts with a disciplined practice of gratitude. And for those of you who are saying, no, that's just, it can't be, just try it. Try it. So, everyone's a gratitude practice can be different. Mine's pretty simple. I do three things. My kids join me. We do three things at the end of the day, and I put them in a jar. And it could range from, I had an incredible podcast with Wade Galt today. I was really thankful for the opportunity. Or it could be, I pulled one out of the jar the other day. My kid put in, I love that Wendy's offers a Mediterranean salad. I mean, it's just the little things. So sometimes they're not always big. So that's number one, is that for those of you listening and for your clients who think that perfect days are far reaching, being grateful for things is just not something we do with our brain every day. And so taking that opportunity is absolutely a pillar of having more perfect days in your life. So obviously I have a process. I started this perfect day process with my clients some 10, 11 years ago. I've been in the asset management business for going on, I believe, 24 years now. I've got the gray covered up a little bit. The wrinkles are there. So I've
They're
got to
hard
do
earned, though.
battle.
They've been earned, right?
They are hard earned, and the market has done most of it. The market and my two teenage girls have done most of the aging for me. All that to say, managed a practice 13 years prior to going into perfect day process. And what the result was is, as you can imagine, clients would come to me in on a wealth path. I want to grow wealth. I want to make more money, whether it's more returns, or I want to do more with what I'm saving, or I want to grow my business or businesses. And it was this pursuit of more. Okay. And I'll quote a few people, but it's really was the somewhat undisciplined pursuit of more, because it was all just about money. Money was the focus. And that's what I do. I've got my, Series 7 and my 63, and I'm a CFP, and I've been, I manage hundreds of millions of dollars for hundreds and hundreds of clients, both individually and institutionally. But what I found out was that for most of them, it was an empty pursuit. And here's the wah-wah, and you may cut this from the interview because it's dark and dreary.
Oh, I love it.
When I woke up,
this is going to be one of the highlight reels.
Well, so when I woke up, and I'm a statistic, and you don't know this about me just yet, but so when I woke up, what I realized is I was sending my clients on a path, and yes, we were achieving more wealth, and yes, we were achieving better returns, and yes, we were, chasing the money needle, and it was working, and it was going all the right way, but there was so much else that wasn't going the right way. And I it's the three things, and unfortunately, I call it death, divorce, and rehab. That's what I've had the quote unquote, air quotes for your listeners, I've had the, quote unquote benefit of seeing that endless pursuit of money and what it can cause. Whether it's, the heart attacks from stress, and I can count those on one hand. The rehabs of my clients and my clients' children, I cannot count on one hand. And the divorces, I can't count on two hands. So when I woke up and said, wow, I need a more disciplined process, it's almost like Maslow's hierarchy, right? It just sort of moved up the ladder in terms of, I don't want to just deliver you to the wealth engine. Like, I can do that. I knew there was something more. And selfishly, taking clients through this process, because it reveals more about who they really are and their value systems and their beliefs, it cemented my best client relationships. So that's the selfish part. But the converse of that is it absolutely helps me serve them better as an advisor, consultant, or asset manager for them, because I can help make them better decisions, forest for the trees, for what they really, really want. So when the client comes to me and says, I want the fourth house in the Bahamas, I'm like, let's go back to your perfect day. Because I think it talked about simplifying your lifestyle and liquidity and the freedom to choose and to your wife. And I don't know. So it helps us ground, and reveal maybe the dust under the shiny baubles that sometimes
that's so awesome.
People like to pursue when they're.
I know.
Well, thank you. It's been very gratifying, and I'll tell you this, Wade. Sitting in a conference room with new clients or old clients, existing clients. Perfect day process does not come naturally to me. I would love for you to whip out your statements and let me get out an Excel spreadsheet and let me get out my financial planning software. Comfy schmumphy. You need a 401k. You need to do some Roth conversions and some cash balance plans and a profit share. I got you. But the perfect day process is the hard stuff. But what I know is it's the clarity that everyone deserves to give themselves.
That's so cool. I know when I've worked with clients and coming from a similar, slightly different background where I grew up in the insurance industry, but similar concept of helping people look at how do you best protect, less focus on the growth of the assets, but protecting. And a lot of the same conversations about, okay, there's the money or the thing, but why? What's behind it? And in the background, when I would do psychology, I did my master's in psychology, and I brought some of that to the work. And I'd ask people, okay, how much money do you want to make? And the scariest answer I sometimes hear, I hear it about maybe one set of every 4 or 5 times, is as much as possible. I say, ooh, that's kind of the answer of the addict. just stereotypically, if the person is, well, because they don't even know what they want it for. I just want as much as I could. And what I love about the financial world is there are some anchors of numbers. If you only do coaching, and there's nothing wrong with only doing coaching, and if you don't bring numbers in, then people can very easily dismiss it as being airy and fairy and light and, oh, perfect day, that's great. And you and your gratitude, that's so nice, and namaste. And they just kind of brush you off. And
Right.
there's this part that when people then have assets involved or business or P&L involved, profit and loss, and then all of a sudden they'll hear a little more, but to your same statement, okay, your fourth house, okay, let's talk about diminishing returns. What is your fourth house going to do for you that your other three haven't done for you? Or sometimes I tell people, look, if you're unable to get your desired result in 4 days of work, what's that magical fifth day going to be like? And I think those are some of the harder questions. They certainly, as you mentioned, lead to deeper client relationships. They lead to usually serving the client better if they want to grow. They definitely are more interesting than just doing the same thing day in and day out. And definitely, hopefully, challenge people to have a broader view of things because, of course, the money is usually for something. It represents something. And I love you mentioned death, divorce, and rehab. And again, these are things people don't like to talk about, but usually those are the symptoms of the flip side. So you have the person that says, well, I led a great life, but I didn't save money. And there's there's some things that are not so good about that. And then there's also, I've saved a lot of money, but I haven't led a great life. And I just, from years ago, I think I kind of got this perspective from my mother was, if every day you have a good day, well, you've had a good life. It can be that simple. It doesn't have
that
to
is
be
very
always
perfect day. Share with me your mother's name.
Anne.
Anne. Okay. Thank you, Anne. I love that. I love that quote. I love that quote, and it's very, very perfect day-esque. And that's why I started with wanting to do the underwhelming aspect of perfect day, because perfect days aren't just, this process is not just for the person who has 4 houses. I mean, honestly, if we do have a perfect day, and I don't know if you know my framework, but I have a little, I like to bring hacks to it because just like you said, people are like, oh yeah, gratitude and blah, blah, blah. And how do we do it? So how do you have a perfect day? So I think your mom would agree, Anne, thank you, that I say that if you do 4 things before 11 a.m., but those 4 things are centered around the 4 things that should be balancing the pursuit of a life well lived. So it's not, money is a quarter of that. Your finance and your financial life is just 1/4 of that. Because, when we depart this earth, and that's the other grim part of this process, is that when we depart this earth, what's the only thing that matters? How about I ask you that? When you depart this earth, Wade, what's the most important thing that you'll be thinking about when you depart, when you say have your last breath?
For me, it's actually something I've thought a lot about, and it's so much part of it, not from an ego standpoint of how will I be remembered, because it's not so much about the reputation part, but yeah, what will people think in the sense of, oh, I remember that Wade was a nice guy. I remember Wade inspired me in some way, or Wade taught me to see the best in myself. Specifically, I'm really big on having, helping and facilitating people enjoy life, people loving themselves, and just not taking stuff so seriously, and just being present for whatever it is that's important to them, and knowing that somewhere in some way I contribute to that, or at the very least, put a smile on their face or made them laugh, very often with an inappropriate joke. That's also, I'm big on those. But just something life was enjoyed. It wasn't so serious. And in fact, I'm even realizing as you're talking the brilliance of the perfect day versus, no, wait, the perfect week, the perfect month, the perfect year. Nope. Just one day. So yeah, if I could be remembered,
very Anne.
That'd be pretty cool.
Well, and isn't that, and I don't mean to lead the witness, but isn't that really, if you could sum it up in one word, it would either, for me, for what you just described, would be connection or impact or relationships.
Absolutely.
And really none of that has to do with money. You don't have to have money to do any of those things. nor does it have to be centered around our career. But by the way, if we can connect and impact and better our relationships through our career, perfect day, right? So kudos to you. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I was just at a workshop that I was hosting for entrepreneurs, and asked them a little bit about, why did they get started and what do they enjoy most and what are they most grateful for? And I very often hear the thing they're most grateful for are the people they meet. It's not the money that they make. It's the people they meet, the connections they make. As an entrepreneur, way I run into these people when I go to seminars or I meet people or I grow a business or employees I have or freelancers that work with me, they usually talk about the relationships. They might also talk about the work and the nature of the work. I can't ever think of a time when somebody said just outright the money. It's, and even if it is the money, it's because the money allows me to, what's the money give you? Oh, well, time with my kids, my wife, my family. And one of the things that I try to remind people of, because as you have seen many people with money and without money who are happy. I've seen many people with money and without money who are not so happy. And so I've at least become very clear that money is not the primary variable. To be really clear, I'd rather have it than not have it. I always look up. I believe there's a God. So yes, I'd rather have it than not have it. But I also am pretty clear.
Agreed. I've been in asset management for 24 years. So if there's anyone who believes that you need money in your life, not for happiness, but it's me. I believe that. I get it. Yes, I'm not going to write myself out of a job there.
Yeah. Oh no. We don't want to do that. But at the same time, when I talk with people, it's even, what would the money do for you? And then you start taking a step back and say, okay, well, how many of the things that are important to me could I do if I didn't have the money? Like as a parent, we do things that we have to do. So there's that question, what would you do if you had, $100 million in the bank? And I hear people say, that's your soul work. I said, no, that's not your soul work. That's your ideal lifestyle. And that would be really cool. To me, your soul work is what you do if you have $0 in the bank. Like your kid wakes up in the middle of the night and you need to feed him or you need to comfort him. Nobody's paying you to do that, but you'll do that. That's your purpose. And of course, the purpose and the profit don't always go together. Sometimes you do what you love and the money follows. Sometimes you do what you love and your kid vomits on you. So it doesn't necessarily mean you get paid for it. But I think there's that balance. And it sounds like you're very much in that conversation of both, of how people do both. So it's not this sort of diluted, stereotypical hippie version of, well, we're just going to, all just hope we're going to live on love and everything's going to take care of itself. At the same time, it's also not this just monomaniacal pursuit of only money, assuming that some larger number on a piece of paper is going to all of a sudden unlock some level of happiness. So what do you find when you talk with your clients? How do you know, or if they're self-examining, how do they know, if they're really in a good place with their relationship with money and how they live their life, and when maybe they do have what you call that lifestyle deficit disorder, where maybe that's perhaps creeping in a little more than would be desired?
Well, lifestyle deficit disorder is something that I suffer from, and then I believe that it's something that once you have it, you always have it, and you just have to keep it at bay. I am here at 46 years of age, recently just sort of unofficially diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. So it's kind of funny that it comes 2 years after. I guess I had a very sneaking suspicion 2 years ago when I coined and patented lifestyle deficit disorder that it's something that all of us entrepreneurs sort of suffer with, right? Squirrel, shiny bauble, go after this, new idea, new vision, grab it. Yes, correct. So it's that feeling of just being out of control and being on this hamster wheel of life. And it's a life that looks like you're living it by default and not by design. And I take that phrase from one of my favorite authors, Greg McKeown, have you read Essentialism? And if not, all your listeners need to write that down, Essentialism. When you talk about things being grateful for, I had the opportunity last week to actually have a post-keynote conversation with him one-on-one. Got to tell him, you have gone to the roof of 4 of the 7 summits of the world with me, because I take that book with me. I'll weave maybe this part of the interview into what's part of my very first perfect day, which is being an alpine mountaineer. But I got to meet Greg McCown last week, and he gave me a big old bear hug at the end, and it just was so inspiring. And just that concept, and I think that's just like a directive that you could take to your clients. And I know you subscribe because of the 4-day work week. It's do you want to live your life by default or by design? And that's, it's a yes or no answer. And so the LDD, it ebbs and flows, and you can wake up and going, oh, I'm living by default, not by design. Zone it in, like get your time system in, rehone your perfect day, get super clear about where you want to be. But I think that idea of essentialism and keeping LDD at bay is how you have perfect days. And just simple framework, like 411, like I mentioned, makes it pretty easy. But paying yourself first financially is sort of a concept we've all heard about, right? But you should also pay yourself first with life.
Yep.
And so when we talk about that elusive work-life balance thing, here's the deal. Little secret. I believe there's no such thing as perfection, says the author of Perfect Day. And I don't believe that there's such a thing as balance. But that 411 framework for a perfect day sort of is this yin and yang of balance, of the imbalance of balance. So it's shoving everything for you, paying yourself first, shoving everything for you in the first part of your day, and then throwing the rest a pot. And who knows what happens after 11 a.m. The world can push and pull on you. And I'm telling you, it's happened. I can do my 411s, and I can have a flight get canceled, true story, and be in Atlanta, and the flight gets canceled, and I can't get home. And you know what? Because I actually did my 411s that day, it was still a perfect day. So it's an example of how life can still, give you lemons. But if you've paid yourself first and done some far-reaching little micro tasks that gets you towards this bigger vision of what you really, really, really want, then you can absolutely have more perfect days in your life.
Absolutely. I love that default rather than design. I definitely need to check out that book. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes. Tell me a little bit of 411. What's that?
It's doing 4 things before 11 a.m. that's going to make it a perfect day. So go back to our strategic coach days. So we're filling out our pocket coach, and you have these things. And I'll speak essentialist. I'll speak Greg McCown for a little bit, which is very perfect day. What are the 4 things that are essential? And pick a time frame. So you and I, or your listeners, are sitting here a year from today. It's April the 29th, 2020. Or whatever date this airs. Write that down, listeners, write it down. Whatever a year or whatever time frame you want. But I would suggest pick a year. You're going to have to do a reset. You're going to have to go outside. You're going to have to put your toes in the sand. You're going to have to take a break to really think about what are the crucial and essential things that you want to be true a year from today. Make sure they're only 51% possible. Okay, so don't have these constraints of like time and money, and I can't achieve those, and how am I going to do this? That's why you have to really, if you have to drink beer, drink a couple. I don't know, but it's hard to switch our brains to get into this place to say, what am I going to be brave enough to actually put down on the piece of paper? Here's the deal, and it's free. I do have a webinar. It's an hour webinar that can take you through a very quickie version of Perfect Day on CokieBerenyi.com. And it'll give you in an hour just a quick framework as to how to do this reset, put your toes in the sand, and write it and create it. But 411 is basically, what are the 4 things? Because it's really forcing your hand to say, you know what? We all wear 10 hats. Okay. And as a woman and a single mother, I have to tell you, and this is reverse sexist, sorry, but we're worse at that than our male counterparts. We wear typically, 30% more hats, I would say, than our male entrepreneur counterparts. But the bottom line is we all suffer from wearing too many of them. And the way of the essentialist says, if you wear all these hats, you're going to achieve nothing.
Yep.
Where's the quality in that? Where's the design? So I tell my clients to put a virtual hat rack in the corner. So in the corner of your office, you can sort of look over there, and you're going to have to decide which hats you're going to put aside. It doesn't mean you don't get to put the hat on every now and again over the course of the next year. It just means that when you have another free minute of time that comes in your life or an extra dollar, the 4 hats that you've chosen you're going to spend that time and money on. And so that's what 411 helps you do. So your 411s or your 4 things you do before 11 may just be tiny micro tasks that take 10 seconds or 10 minutes. It shouldn't be, 2 hours of your life that's devoted to, these 4 major tasks, but it's just about keeping momentum and progress towards that vision. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think for a lot of
I
this,
have these handy dandy little 411, like mine's a mess. Got a little Patagonia sticker, and it's just got all my notes in it. But I fill this out every day, and I go about my day, and it happens. It's magic.
very cool. We'll definitely include the link to the webinar on that. Yeah, it's something I think that most of us have read it and we've heard it. It's the counterintuitive stuff. It's like when people hear me say, "Oh, you're going to work less and make more." Really, Wade? It sounds like you're in the insurance field, right? Yeah, okay. It sounds like an insurance, like a sleazy, cheesy insurance salesperson's promise. Somehow you're going to make magic happen, and it's really not so much magic as it is just knowing. Look, you can't. There's a concept in software. You'd rather have a half-completed project that is 100% working, in other words, no bugs, than to have a project that's double the size and 50% of it's crashing. So people get, if you word it in that way or other different ways, or just saying you're going to do a little bit at a time, or probably one of the best things I've heard that helped me with the scroll syndrome and what do I do next, and was, look, you can do everything, just write it all down, but you're only going to do 1 or maybe 2 or 3 things at a time. And like you say, so maybe there's this hat rack, and maybe there's sort of the ones in the front, maybe the back. I don't really have a hat rack, so I don't know what it looked like, but I'm imagining mine. And mine would kind of have this thing like a dry cleaner where it comes out in front, where I'm like, okay, those are the hats I'm going to be looking at in a few months from now, and I'm going to put them back there. I love those hats, but I'm not ready for them right now.
Absolutely.
And I think even just that sense of having some sort of balance, because again, just a simple concept as a parent to say, how can I simultaneously focus on my business that I care about, my children that I care about, and let's say be present with my friends? You can't do all 3 at the same time. And it doesn't mean that one is more important than the other. You really have to kind of, I don't know if it's like a serial monogamy or whatever the thing is, you have to be present with one, and then you can move on to the next one. But I think we have this expectation that we can do multiple things. And as it's been demonstrated, this thing called multitasking, there really is no such thing. Our brain doesn't work that way. Our brain does work on one task at a time. And so it might happen quickly that we do this, but it's actually still single tasking in sort of this serial way. Read an article on it that explained it better. And that our brain takes so much time to reset when we keep changing tasks. And so in all of this, so much of this is just an expectation when you compare what we have and how simple it is. We say, gosh, I wish I had it simpler. Like kids, they have it simpler. Well, just have less things. Take some things off the plate, or at least push them to the back. And it sounds easy, and it's certainly not easy. But I think to your point with checking in each day of what you're grateful for, you check in for more than a week of what you're grateful for, and you almost say, wait, I'm noticing a pattern here. The things I'm most grateful for usually don't fall into the category of money or productivity or, hey, my ROI just went up. Usually it has something to do with a relationship or an achievement or a challenge or something we didn't know we could do, something that's more speaks to our spirit. And I think that's something that I find the clients I have, that when they're coming to me and they're talking to me about how much more, in my case, it might be more in their business, how much more they need to make. And they're so dissatisfied with Susie or Johnny because they need to perform more. And I'm like, whoa. Tell me what your weekend was like. Oh, my weekend was horrible. I obsessed over my business. Okay, so that's the issue. You're not finding happiness. It's not about Johnny or Susie or the ROI or the whatever, because Susie and Johnny have had good months, and and you've had good months. But that expectation, and especially with what's going on in the world, there's the expectation things are going to continue to go like this. Certainly, let me do this way because I always forget it's reverse on the camera. But the things are just going to keep going up. And if you look at the Western world specifically, if you and I live in America, United States of America, we're used to economy going up and things increasing. And now that you have a world economy, things are sort of flattening out a bit because the opportunity is being spread and people are kind of losing their mind like, wait, well, we're America. Everything's supposed to always go up. And it's like, no, it doesn't always work that way. And what do you do when you realize that, no, you're not always going to make all the money in the world forever? What are you leaning your happiness against? And like you said, what are you grateful for?
The gratitude exercise for the perfect day process. I'll give a little bit away here as to the process. What it leads to is this aha moment of what are your most prized assets in your life. Because when you do an asset inventory and you ask clients about, and they come into your asset management business, and they've got their Merrill Lynch statements or whomever, and when they get into asset mode, it's houses, cars, 401ks. But again, when you do the gratitude exercise, that's not what hits the paper. And so what I learned when I wrote my very first Perfect Day in 2003, I think this might be a good story for your listeners, but what I learned in 2003 with Perfect Day and how it was, the Perfect Day process was brought to me, and what I've done to, air quotes again, perfect it or make it a little bit better. Because isn't that what we do as entrepreneurs, right? We just take a wheel and we just make it bigger and better and more efficient. So what I found with myself and some others, not so much with myself and others in 2003 with our Perfect Days written, is that there were a lot of shiny baubles written in them. And so this gratitude exercise is the foundation of writing your best perfect day. And forget about writing your perfect day. It's the foundation for having that clarity and that vision. So if your listeners salivate at the idea of clarity or salivate at the idea of vision, and I certainly do, it's like, you can never have enough. Can never have enough clarity and vision, right? It starts with the gratitude process, because when you look at your gratitude lists and your inventories, 9 times out of 10, your perfect day recipe is just simply going to be about making more of what's already on your list. So whatever's on your list, if you're thankful for your health, if you're thankful for your relationships, if you're thankful for your farm, make more of that, better that. And, it's unfortunate the human condition, this goes a little bit back to the multitasking. It's unfortunate the human condition is one of taking our most prized assets for granted, and how our brains lie to us all the time about multitasking and about the idea of distractions or our businesses, and how the lie of, if I spend my whole weekend focusing on my business, it's going to better my life, when really it's just a distraction away from the things that are most important to you. And so our brains lie to us every day. And it tells us that, oh, multitasking, this is great because I'm so busy, or I'm working all weekend on my business and that must mean I'm so successful. No, not at all. Not at all. So I think, again, not to beat a dead horse, but when you do go through Perfect Day process and identify the 4 hats that come first, so it's a filter, right? I now have more time. For some reason, I got lucky and I found an extra hour in my day, or I found an extra $10. What are you going to do with it? You go to your 4 hats, and it goes there. That's it. It's not to say that, you're not going to pick up that other hat at some other point, but 9 times out of 10, one of those hats is you and your health and your family and your relationships. And so my goal is to impact others to that's their answer, that's where they put their next resource. So I think that that's been one of the big ahas. But, the 2003 perfect day, I want to share this with your listeners because, again, I love the idea of underwhelming people. And here's what you need to know is that in 2003, I was managing upwards of $350 million in assets. And I was a one-arm paper hanger, and I was newly married, no children. And my business coach said, you've got to come in and you've got to do this thing called, you've got to take an entire day and you're going to pay me for it. And you're going to write your perfect day. And yes, you're not going to earn any money. It's a non-revenue day. And you're going to pay me and you're going to sit in a room with strangers and you're going to sit down and write your perfect day. And I'm like, I'm going to do what? So I said yes. And the moment I said yes is probably when I probably peed my pants the worst, because it was like, when I do that, I'm committed and I'm in. So I'm in. It was a cold day in January 2003, and I literally pull in on two wheels in my car, and I'm blaring Enya, and I'm late. I'm blaring Enya so I can try and get in the zone of Zen, what am I doing? Okay, get in the zone, get in the zone. You're wasting an entire day. You're not going to earn any money. It's cost a lot. Turn it up louder. Go faster, So it's just this complete conundrum, right? I pull it on two wheels. I remember this. I go to get out of the car and my seatbelt is still on. And so I basically get whiplash. I can't even get out of the car to run into the workshop, and I'm late. And what I need you to know is that was my frame of mind. So if that feels familiar to you, and I still get there. I still have those days, by the way. I do often. But what listeners need to know, and this is in the book. The book, I believe, is free on download still at CokieBerenyi.com. And I share a copy of my perfect day in the book. But what emerged, and your listeners don't know this, but I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I was raised at sea level. I've never climbed a mountain in my life. And I walked out of that 2003 workshop climbing the 7 summits of the world. And I had a nonprofit called She Climbs. That was to, empower and build the self-confidence of women and teens of all, women of all ages. Fast forward 12 years, and this is the underwhelming part, because I don't know how that happened. I still don't know how that happened. I promise you I don't. And it was not Enya blowing out the bass in my car that day. It wasn't. I love you, Enya, but no. I still don't know how that happened, all by the grace of God. But the intention of wanting clarity and wanting vision, I need everyone to know, is enough. That's enough. Next step is writing it and putting on the page is enough. You don't even have to look at it again. If you write it and put it on the page, you've heard the stories about, blah, 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 the bogus. I think there's some bogus stats around the success of the people who actually write down their goals. But same thing. You don't even have to relook at your perfect day. Just try it. Just try and get in the moment. Try and get one written, because fast forward 12 years, I'm summiting Kilimanjaro with my 9-year-old daughter, who becomes the youngest female American to climb Kilimanjaro, and She Climbs was born. So, I'm Wade, you know me, and when I write something down, guess when I want it done? Yesterday. Right? I don't know if that resonates with anyone. But, 12 years to the future, She Climbs is born. And 16 years to the future, 17 will be next year. I'll be topping out, Lord willing, Mount Everest, which will be my 5th of my 7 summits of the world.
That's awesome.
So it's just setting an intention, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a grind. It doesn't have to constantly be rolling a boulder up a hill in this constant push to achieve all these things. It just takes renewing your sense of who we are and what we're doing here on the face of this planet. And, you said something earlier about your clients and asset protection. And I think that again, whether, you have a client who has $5 million or $5,000, in their bank account or on their net worth statement, the sooner that they can realize and learn from the ER, I call them ER moments in the book, the sooner that they can learn from all the death, divorces, and rehabs that I'm trying to spread amongst the world and sprinkle, they have a choice. Either you can learn them by listening and actually having some sort of transformative change in your life, or you can have the ER moment yourself and you can wake up yourself. And you know what the statistics are on which one is, which way it usually goes. It's unfortunate, but most people, like the child, touching the burner, they have to touch the burner themselves. So, it's my sort of overarching goal to try and get people to sidestep those ER moments. But the sooner that people at large, no matter what your net worth, can learn that our greatest asset is our ability to contribute, the sooner that we can learn that, the sooner we find happiness and joy. And that's honestly what everyone wants, right?
Absolutely. And one of the things, I'm going to throw something by you that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but what I've experienced or what I've seen is in watching people that have a lot of money, and people have far more money than I have or earn more than I have, I've seen something that, and I think it's almost like kind of the great secret or the great lie. And I'll make an analogy, then I'll share the secret. So I'll also build up to it here. If you were to tell most people or have them experience, okay, like take a teenager and say, okay, let's have you get up in the morning 3 times and let's have you feed this thing called a baby. And I've heard some parents do this when they hear their kids might be becoming active a little earlier than they'd like or whatever. Like, okay, let's get you up, for a month, 3 times every day, feed, you might not romanticize as much specifically something that could lead you to getting pregnant. And again, it's almost maybe even a little pragmatic as opposed to the whole idealistic view, but just really simple, like you might not want to be a parent yet. And you'd say, okay, maybe they'd have a different appreciation than the person says, oh, guess what? My husband and I just got married. We're not happy. And, or my wife and I just got married. We're not happy. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to have a kid. Like as if that's going to fix it. It's like, no, that's not the approach. And what when I talk to people about
our budget and
once you've experienced that, and having children, it can be beautiful, but it's work. And so most people you can hear in their how they talk, whether they have children or not, with the way they refer to certain things or how easy certain things are. And similarly, I think there's, I got this secondhand to your point. I got to watch a lot of my father's friends. My father's a very talented entrepreneur. And back in the 80s, a lot of my father's friends were making multiples of 6 figures, which back then is like, at least 7 figures in today's money for the most part. And or at least where they were, because they were high, mid to high up 6 figures. And I got to see, and this is net income, just in case, some people talk about gross. This was their net income and more money than knew what to do with. And again, some were very happy and some were just so miserable. But the ones that were most miserable, there was this, they got blindsided because they really genuinely thought, and these are good people, hardworking, that thought, when I hit this number, then it's all going to change. And I've always told people, the reason why I think sometimes some of the biggest meltdowns come from your stereotypical Hollywood star, sports star that has literally, 8, 9 figures of assets or whatever it might be, or income, is that they actually know what the majority of the population doesn't know. What the majority of the population is still saying, oh, when I get there, and they've got that hope. So like, oh no, it's not fun now, but when I get there. And so they're living off of that. Whereas the others, they know the truth. And if you've leaned your life up against that ladder, if you've really bet all your money on, that, what happens when it's not there, I can imagine that can be very disconcerting and that's an understatement. I'm trying to work on my words so I don't use the big fancy, the saucy words. But in essence, to realize you put all your life into that, and then they start thinking about, I gave up this, I gave up that, I gave up that for this. And that's the part I think that sometimes people have. And so what I love about talking to someone like you who's worked with people is say, no, really, genuinely, and specifically in the perfect day, unless I'm mistaken, your model is not set up to make a bajillion dollars off of that. You're already good. You're making money doing what you already do. So this is more of a passion thing for you. I mean, not that you can't make money at, but you don't need it to eat. And so to tell somebody, look, this is somebody who doesn't need you to buy their course. It's not her only source of income. That's saying, look, I work with people that have lots of money. And again, it's great when they can do it. But I mean, what's your experience on that? Or what would you say to that, this idea of people betting so much on it and then realizing that it's not it, and then that being probably one of the bigger disappointments for them?
I would say 100% of the time, and in my business, in my line of work, finance, regulated by the SEC, blah, 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 you can never say this, right? And so it's not in my fabric to speak this way. But let me just say this. 100% of the people, we are all wired with what I call, and you know this through Strategic Coach and otherwise, a cognitive horizon. I mean, there's a horizon out there that we're always moving towards. You never, ever get there. And 100% of us are wired that way. That's how we were born. That's how our brains are built. And so there's no question if you're going after that shiny bauble or I'll be happy when, and you fill in the blank. It's a lie. It's another one of the lies. And, the recipe, going back to Anne and 411, is you've got to find it today. You have to find the happiness and the joy today. And again, I don't care if you have $5,000 or, $500 million. If you don't find it today, there's no guarantees for it tomorrow. And it's just as simple as that. And if you want to put your hand on the burner, you can put your hand on the burner, but you're going to get burned and it's going to hurt. And so you have a choice. And, what I've seen with money, and Greg McKeown talks about this in Essentialism, and I think it's classic because you can, for your entrepreneur clients who can think about some of the greatest corporate failures, and what comes to mind? I mean, right now, what comes to mind for me is Blockbuster or Toys R Us. What also comes to mind for me is Lucent Technologies. I'm sort of dating myself, but back in the day, before Lucent failed, it was the number one most widely held stock on the New York Stock Exchange. And I'm an asset manager. I know this. We all owned Lucent, right? So then transpose that to the human, to the entrepreneur, to the individual, and do sort of this parallel with corporate success. It's you either have these failures, such as we just eliminated, either you have these failures or you have these plateaus. And so think about yourself personally and financially, or with your own business. Are you growing, or are you plateauing, or are you failing? And what comes with success is options, right? Opportunities, right? Your business starts thriving. And so then you have all these different opportunities, whether within your business or whether your personal life, right? And so what happens when you get options?
Well, it depends if you know what you want to do with them, to your point. If you're not on target, I would imagine, or at least in my experience, I can undo all the good, so specifically financially, I can undo all the good by not knowing what I want to do with that stuff. I know that's for sure.
So if you don't have vision and clarity and you have all those options, back to your clients who have all, high net worth, high net income, and you talk about how you have all this extra wealth, doesn't mean you have more time in your life, because then you're also managing all that wealth. So with success comes opportunities, and with opportunities comes complexity. Yuck. We don't want complexity, right? We want simplification. At least I do. I want simple schmemple. Like, make it simple, baby. And so that's the secret sauce of whether you fail or plateau or grow, is when you get to that opportunity bucket, do you really have a clear vision? And can you keep it simple? And if
Yeah.
you
And I
don't
think
have the
that's the
vision,
thing.
and I like that Greg suggests every 90 days doing a reset. And he says you can't, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. Again, go back to me on two wheels pulling into the parking lot, blaring Enya. You can't get into this space of creating the clarity and the vision of what you really want that's going to be rooted in your values and your beliefs and bring you happiness. You can't get there without sort of stepping outside of yourself. Every 90 days is impressive. I don't, on a highly disciplined way, do it every 90 days. I get the benefit of anytime I take clients through a perfect day boot camp or one of my workshops, I also take the opportunity to renew, my inventories of gratitude and assets and rewriting perfect days. But, part of my discipline process, you've probably heard about Bill Gates. Doesn't Bill Gates go in the woods for like a year? Every year, doesn't he go in the woods with like 12 or 15 books or something? I don't know if you've heard that story.
I haven't heard that.
But I get in a tent and I go on the mountain and I peel off everything. And it doesn't have to be that extreme, but I'm that girl, It's like there's no financial exchanges. The simplification is, am I warm? Am I hungry? Am I hydrated? And that's my reset. And that's where I get my clarity. It doesn't have to be that hard. I also love it, by the way. I love alpine climbing.
Well,
But
that's the thing I tell people is trying to figure out our wiring. And I think the perfect day concept is, what I tell people with what you would do, I anchor it with, what would you do with your Fridays? And it doesn't have to be Friday. It doesn't have to be 4 days, but it's a framework. And in my case, I absolutely loathe running. But if you put a leather ball and a net in front of me, I'll run on the beach for 5 to 6 hours in 90-degree weather chasing the volleyball. I don't know why. I certainly have, but I like that. So I'll do that. And I work so I have time to do that. And just even something as simple as, why not give that to yourself and allow yourself to have that? And that, yes, the most simple things, the things that make life perfect or enjoyable, very often are the simple things. And there's nothing wrong because they're easy or they're low-hanging fruit. We can still take those. That's smart. And then, yes, if you add to that some complexity, some drama, some excitement, things you don't know you can do, certainly. But I think, at least in my experience, the things that make me happiest, the things that at the end of the day, whether it's a gratitude exercise or when I'm writing a list, like you said, or talking about, what do you hope for at the end of your life? Well, specifically, I hope my kids and my wife are, think I did a good job. Yeah. As a dad and as a husband, I hope they can feel all the love I have for them and all those things. So all the other stuff wouldn't matter to me. And so if I can focus on those things and do those things on a daily basis, my stock portfolios will go up and down, or my numbers will go up and down, or my assets. I certainly have lots of regrets about financial decisions I've made, but the guaranteed investments I've made have been investments in relationships with the people I love most, have been investments in myself, been investments in activities I enjoy. Those, you just can't take that away from me. And so the more I can anchor, I can anchor with that, the better. And the more I can do that on a daily basis, absolutely. My last question for you, then take this wherever you like. What do you teach your daughters? What do you teach them? Or what are you trying to impart? And then what are you showing them by the way you live to impart to them, which perhaps might even be the same lesson you'd leave our audience with? What are some of maybe the 2 or 3 most important lessons you're hoping that they get, that you've learned that maybe you didn't know?
Wow. Well, let me start with, so this isn't the answer to your question, but this is what comes to mind, part of it. The working title for Perfect Day was, I majored in finance so I wouldn't get screwed. And the publisher didn't like that, needless to say. And let me tell you where that came from. That came from my mother. And my mother looked at me when I was 8 years old, and we were going through somewhat of a very large family crisis. where my father no longer was an income earner in the family, and she was a stay-at-home mom of 2 and is now looking at having to go and get a job and support us. And she said, don't you ever count on anyone to take care of you. And so fast forward to being a freshman in college and going, well, those words just hit me. I'm like, so then what do I major in? Like, what do I need to do in order to not have to rely on other people? And so I did this little exercise in my brain, and I said, you know what? If there's anywhere I'm going to get screwed in life, it's going to be with money. So I better find a very trustworthy insurance agent, right? Or know a whole hell of a lot about it. So anyway, that's the working title of Perfect Day, is having those, that value structure and that belief structure was put in me at a very young age. And so that shaped my decisions. It shaped my decisions, 15 years, to the future. So then that's a part of it. And to really answer your question, I think what my girls would learn and know is that 2 years ago, I made a decision to merge the larger of my asset management businesses. And I did that because my girls at the time were 10 and 12. And so that was the age at which I felt like, okay, I've amassed a couple businesses and nonprofits, and I've worked hard during these school age years. They're now at this point where I'm really shaping their value structure and their beliefs and their work ethic. And quite frankly, I'm going to be losing them in 5 or 6 years. They're going to go off to college. So for me, if I were to draw my last breath today, I would want to be able to say that I gave my girls a foundation that, when they go off to school, or if I were to depart this earth today, that they had that foundation and knew how to live their lives and knew how to put first things first and what was important to them. So I made a decision a couple years ago to pretty much sell the golden goose super early. And so they know that I made that sacrifice. They know that I sold a large part of my business and offloaded a large part of it so that I could be more present as a parent and as a mom and as a friend and as a leader of our family, because some people can do it better than I and don't have to make drastic changes like that in their life. But I just knew me, and I tried it many, many, many times. And I do the 4-day work week. But it still wasn't enough. And I talk about this in the book about who's getting your leftovers. I still was working just so hard and so intently during the week that, I'd come home to them at a very respectable hour, 5 o'clock. It's not 8, it's not 7, but they were getting my leftovers. I was emotionally spent. And so they know that I made that decision. It frightened the hell out of them, I'll tell you that. They were like, are you going to be a stay-at-home mom? So I told them, no, I'm not going to be a stay-at-home mom. that was really scary to them. So that would be one thing that I would share. I'm sorry for the phone, and I'm not sure if you want me to pause.
No worries.
So that would be one thing, is I think that they know that I chose them, and they know how I'm a serial entrepreneur, and they know how much I love business, and they know how much I impact lives, and I love what I do. They saw me put that on the shelf, and they know why. So that's one thing. And I do think the second thing is they know how important it is for me in all my hands in nonprofits and how I try to give back. They've seen the joy that that's brought my life. So it's not just about serving on boards, but it's just, they've seen the joy that's come from contributing. And yes, they roll their eyes when I'm like, we've got a She Climbs event, and Gabriel, our lead guide from Africa, is in town. We've got to take him to dinner and do a dog and pony show to to the 3, middle schools here in town, and they roll their eyes because they need to give speeches because they're She Climbs ambassadors. And so they're teenagers, right? But they're still exposed. They're still exposed to it, and they know how busy I am, and I hate that word busy, but they know how full our lives are, but they know that I still squeeze in the puzzle piece. They know it's a corner of the puzzle, and you can't finish the puzzle without the corner. And contribution is the biggest of the corner pieces that has got to be there. So if there's going to be a puzzle piece that falls on the floor, you can tell we do a lot of puzzles in my family. If there's going to be that proverbial puzzle piece that falls on the floor and gets lost in the rug, or the dog picks it up and takes it off somewhere, do not make it your core. Do not make it yourself and your family and your relationships or your contribution, to this earth. Maybe make it your experiences. Maybe make it financial. I said that. So I think that would be the 2 things my kids would say, is that they've seen me, put my business aside a little bit. I still work. I mean, I'm still working 4 days a week. But it's having offloaded investment management for hundreds of millions of assets to a team of 6 as opposed to just me has been a big, big deal for my life and for my kids.
That's awesome. I think, when I think of just the whole overall picture, everything, say, yeah, what would you give up for the people you love? And then you also realize that a lot of it's not even so much a giving up as it's a realizing perhaps, something that's even of a higher value than you want, something you treasured, the one thing, and then you found something that was even more valuable, that you willingly give it up, even though you kind of want to, but you do that. So that's awesome. How can our listeners learn more about you? You made a couple references. So you referenced the book, I know, on Essentialism, which we'll put that in the show notes and the links. I'll get all that information from you. Where can they learn more about your work and what you do?
At CokieBerenyi.com, which is the hardest thing to spell.
We'll put it in the show notes.
But yes. So CokieBerenyi.com will talk about, I love being on the speaking circuit and being able to share the perfect day concept with others. So I've got information there about that. You can get information about how to engage with me. If I've tried to deliver perfect day in all modalities, because people learn and people transform in different ways. But I'll tell you, I have a Perfect Day podcast, which I'd love to have you on. I thank you for this opportunity. I mean, I'm not a huge podcaster. I'm not a huge e-course person, but people are. So I deliver Perfect Day in all modalities. My favorite is to do one-on-one engagements, with the entrepreneurs I work for, is really putting the rubber where the rubber meets the road between their personal finance and their business P&Ls, and then putting an umbrella over all of that of Perfect Day, and bringing it all together for them, and us making personal financial and business decisions that are guided by their Perfect Day vision. I love doing that. So that all of that, as well as a guide to what I think is a solution to most of my clients' lives, which is the asset management piece. Because you and I both know it does take money to make the engine go round. And I always like being a solutions gal. So, when I'm consulting with my clients, 9 times out of 10, it's, the investment management is such a headache. So we have a solution for that too. So CokieBerenyi.com, and you can find all things about Perfect Day. Let me give this last shout out. I do this crazy thing on Facebook, 5:30 a.m. every Monday morning, and that's where we kick off 411. So if you want to know more about 411, or to see me riff with a cup of coffee and maybe last night's mascara on, or maybe me sweaty just off the treadmill, it's the look you'll find me in most, as opposed to what I look like on the cover of my book. But you'll get the real Cokie, And it's 5:30 in the morning. And I believe it's the secret to transformation. So if you don't want to fail or plateau, if you don't want to be that corporation or that business or that person that settles with plateauing and you want to avoid, touching the burner, for me, for you, it's get up at 5:30 in the morning and set your intentions with your 411s, and I'll help you do it on Monday mornings on Facebook. So that Facebook page is Perfect Day Connect.
Awesome. Thank you. And we'll definitely make sure to put all those links in there. Thank you so much for coming out and talking with me and sharing this with our audience. I really, do what I can to get really talented people and people who can provide a lot of perspective. And I think our audience is going to love what you're sharing. So for those of y'all listening, again, whether you're an entrepreneur, an employee, or freelancer, what I'm going to make sure I do is share with you people who've had each of those experiences. And most of us who are entrepreneurs at one point, we're employees or worked for somebody else, or we've done these different pieces. So I encourage you, whatever stage you're at, that it's not just the money advice. It's not just the lifestyle advice. It's not just the happiness advice. It's the perspectives of people that have done this and are sharing things. And again, you can put your hand on the fire yourself to really make sure that the fire will burn, or hopefully you can learn from some of this. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I look forward to hearing your feedback on this. Cokie is definitely somebody who can help you. And as always, I look forward to helping you make more money in less time doing what you do best, so you can enjoy your friends, your family, and your life. Thanks, everyone.